Suspect my girlfriend has been sabotaging my jobs for years. Confronted the truth, and my life turned upside down. I'm 24M, and I've been with my girlfriend, 29F, let's call her Janice, for 2.5 years. When we started dating, I had just finished my education and was jumping between all sorts of jobs to build my resume and gain experience. I worked in cafes, bookstores, a library, a grocery store, and even as an English tutor. Most of these jobs lasted about 3 to 5 months. My shortest stay was 2.5 weeks, and my longest was 8 months. While I didn't have a hard time finding new jobs, the constant turnover weighed on me. The issue wasn't just me. It always felt like something external was working against me. People would call to complain about me, leave bad reviews, or even use my employee Wi-Fi to look up sketchy stuff under my name. There were even instances of former employees calling my jobs to spread false information about me using my real name. It was subtle, insidious, and nearly impossible to prove. I was too anxious to confront it head-on, but every time I turned to Janice. She comforted and supported me every time my life felt derailed. Fast forward to this week. I'm currently working part-time at a bakery, and it's been going okay for 2.5 months. But then my manager brought up a Google review. Someone had written a pretty nasty and detailed comment about an employee, and the description could only really apply to me. It was one of those days where we were short-staffed, so it's possible I was the only one in the store at the time. This wasn't the first time I dealt with this. Similar things had happened at 1 or 2 of my previous jobs. I told my manager that the review was bogus and that someone seemed to have a vendetta against me. She believed me and said she'd dismiss the comment. On my break, I looked at the review myself. The username stood out. It was one of those names that seemed fake but plausible. Let's just call it Mick Myrtle. That evening, I went home but didn't mention the incident to Janice. She's heard it all before, and I didn't want to complain again. We were chatting like normal. Everything was fine, and then she left the room. Her phone was on the table, and a notification popped up. It was from Google, and the preview read something like, "Mick Myrtle, manager, has responded to your review." My heart sank. It fit the pattern, the bad reviews, the complaints, the unexplained issues that have followed me from job to job. Why would she do this? She's the person I've leaned on through all of this, the one keeping me grounded. I've been trying to ignore it for 2 days now, but I can't shake it. I just don't understand. Update 15 days later. First of all, yes, we broke up. From here on, I'll refer to her as my ex. Let's go back to the beginning. On Monday of the following week, I couldn't handle the uncertainty anymore. I asked my ex for access to her booking account, saying I needed to book a train ticket to visit my dad for a few days. She handed it over, and while she was in the shower getting ready for work, I booked my ticket and started looking through her emails. What I found shook me to my core. After some digging, I came across an email she'd sent to herself that contained a spreadsheet file. I sent it to myself, took a screenshot, and printed it out. Why? Because that spreadsheet held everything about me. My numbers, emails, passwords, work schedules, my colleagues' contact details, and social media accounts, and even emails and passwords she had used to sabotage me. Everything was neatly organized, almost like she had a system for ruining my life. Once she left for work, I knew I had to act fast. I packed up everything I could, anything important. I wasn't leaving a single thing behind. It felt like I was being hunted, even though everything seemed normal on the surface. I called my boss, explained that I needed time off, and went straight to my dad's place. My dad was the lifeline I needed. I broke down. I cried for days and panicked nonstop, convinced my life was completely ruined. I couldn't sleep. I was terrified my ex would somehow show up. My dad handled it all like a champ. He even gave up his bed for me because I was too scared to be alone. Love you, Dad. He called the police, a lawyer, and even found a therapist for me. I was in the worst state of my life, but he stepped in and took charge. Now, we're in the middle of sorting out the legal side of things. I haven't spoken to my ex, except to tell her it's over and that what she did was beyond sick. My dad handled the rest. I've changed all my passwords and am currently looking for a new place to live. It's a long road, but I'm working on putting my life back together. Second update 2 years later. To those of you who've just found this story recently, welcome. I've responded to all the DMs so far, and before I let the next wave of messages build up, here's a quick update. We ultimately decided not to take her to court. This might sound controversial considering everything she did to me, but I don't regret it. The thought of her facing consequences sounded satisfying in theory, but the reality was different. The anxiety, fear, and sheer dread of the legal process would have destroyed me. I was such a wreck at the time, I couldn't eat for weeks without getting sick. My dad stepped in and handled almost everything because I physically couldn't. Dad, if you're reading this, thank you for everything. On the bright side, our lawyers resolved everything privately, and I haven't had any issues with her since, at least not that I'm aware of. I've moved to a new place, found a stable job, and started healing through therapy. That's where I found my closure and sense of justice. Hopefully, she's been able to find her own peace too. We've had no contact since then, and I've never read the messages she sent me after everything happened. Of course, my journey isn't over. I still keep my social media accounts private and maintain a low online profile. I still get anxious sometimes, especially when things go wrong at work. But the silver lining? No panic attacks in months, and my therapist has been amazing. I have no idea how she's doing now. Maybe she's moved on. What I do know is that my life has moved forward, and nothing in the past 2 years can be tied back to her schemes.